Hey, Matt,
Yes, Ryan.
can you lend me a few bucks? And tonight, can you get us a ride?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, and where do you think we should go?
Wherever we can listen to this.
Ah! And welcome back, everybody! This is the best music podcast on the interwebs, hosted by two best friends who, just every week we just take turns picking albums that we go over track by track. It could be very detailed examinations, or it could be like, hey, I like this track, let's move on, or hey, I don't like this track, let's move on. So I am Ryan Kearns.
I'm Matt Durzik.
I realized that I didn't introduce us, and people are going to be like, who's talking right now?
Well, I mean, if they're listening on their platform of choice or watching this on YouTube, they probably looked at the details and be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, but I mean, for those of you who just blindly click on stuff, and
This is true. It is 2024.
Yeah. So hey, welcome. And this week it was Matt's choice to pick the album that we're gonna look over.
Yes, and as is custom with me, except for the 1 month in which I told neither of us to do the usual thing, I went with an older album, and I decided to go with an album that has been very well acclaimed over the course of its existence on this planet, and that is Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen.
Why did you choose this, other than it being a very acclaimed album?
Because, well, there's a couple of reasons. So I've been walking this year. I've been getting back into the habit of trying to walk every day, and I've been listening to albums like one per session. And this was one of the ones that came out. I was like, oh, because I had a thought. It's that, for as long as we've been doing this show, which is, I think this is episode number 18 or 19 now.
Okay.
Except for Blue, I don't think I've given out a 10. And you also gave that a 10. So I'm thinking, this could be an opportunity for me to give a 10 and for Ryan to not give it a 10. But we will find out at the end of the episode if I do give this a 10.
Oh, okay. I am very intrigued, man. So, for those of you who are like, what is a Bruce Springsteen? I don't know, what else can be said about him? Like, American singer-songwriter. I think Born to Run was, his big breakout album, if I'm not mistaken.
It was. It wasn't his first album. It was his third album. His first two were Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey, which I believe was 1972, and The Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle, which was 1973.
Okay.
So this is 2 years after that. So this is album number 3. And this is the album that went all the way to, I think, number 3 on the charts. The lead single, which is the title track, went all the way to number 23.
Okay.
And this was the first album where people really noticed Springsteen for the first time.
And forgive me for my lack of research, but is this the first album where it features the E Street Band as well?
I don't think so. I think it might be the second album.
Okay.
Because I'm not 100% sure. I have not listened to Greetings from Asbury Park or The Wild Innocent and the E Street Shuffle at any point. So my knowledge on those is limited. But my knowledge on this album is a little different than that.
Okay, cool. So, without further ado, are you ready to get at her?
Let's get at her.
All right, so the opening track is Thunder Road. And I'm going to let you open it up. Because I feel like in a lot of episodes, I'm the one who's just basically leading the charge. And you're like, okay. And I guide everything, but I'm gonna turn the tables here.
All
so, tell us about what is a Thunder Road.
Thunder Road is the opening track, which has been in and of itself acclaimed for being this powering anthemic ode to owning a big fast car and being the man about town with a big fast car and. Honestly, I don't think it's as great as people think it is. I'm not saying it's bad at all. I think this is a very good song, and I think it's a great album opener.
Yeah.
but it does feel very much like the intro to a musical about a guy from New Jersey with a fast car.
Yeah.
Like, he's talking about, hey, I don't want to be lonely tonight. So let me get this, hot rod out of my garage. I'll pick you up at your house, and we're just going to go into the night and find out what's there.
Yeah.
And I think this song does a very good job of conveying that. I think it builds up very well. I think the sax coda at the end is great. The only part about the song I'm not hot on, it's not bad, but I'm not hot on, is the harmonies on the vocals. Because they seem a little, I want to say off kilter, but I'm trying to think if that's Springsteen harmonizing with himself or if he has someone backing him up. Whoever it is, someone's up like way in the register, and it just feels kind of weird. But again, that's just a real like detailed nitpick. Otherwise, I think this is a solid album opener. Do I think it's one of the 100 greatest songs of all time, like Rolling Stone said back in 2003? No, I don't. I don't think it's number 86 on the list. But I think it's a good song.
Yeah. This does definitely feel like a, hey, Rolling Stone would really, really love this kind of track here. And so, like, overall, I would say, from an instrumental standpoint, this is a great track. And, like, you made a good comparison to how this feels like an opening number to a musical, because there's a couple different points throughout the album where it definitely does feel that, especially with the last track, Jungleland, and how, like, that whole album, the whole track ends.
Yes.
But we'll get to that much later on. My beef here is with Bruce's singing.
Yeah, and I knew beforehand that this was going to be a sticking point for you.
Yeah. Whenever you mentioned that we were going to cover Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run, I don't know if you remember, but I had a oh kind of reaction.
Yes, I do remember that.
And I was just like, okay, I know that I don't like his singing, but let's actually, do my due diligence and check out each track and try to really look at it with a fresh set of eyes and listen to it with a fresh set of ears and be open-minded instead of just being like, oh no, caveman brains here, this is bad track. So for those of you who are wondering, every single note I have on every single track here is Bruce's vocals. But I have a detailed reasoning for why. But in this one here, I feel like his singing sounds so strained, and his voice tends to fall flat, and it just takes away from the track for me. Like, instantly, if you swap out with any of the vocalists, and I would be curious to re-examine his later catalog, because I remember listening to his album Radio Nowhere and thinking that the vocals there are pretty good. It would be interesting to see if he would even consider. I don't think he would remaster this album because he really has something to prove at this point.
No, really, he doesn't.
But again, for me on my ears, the singing really takes away from the track. However, I'm going to talk about the E Street Band and the rest of the compositional elements that are here, because that would be a disservice, honestly. So, you know what kind of vibe I got off of this track here?
What?
An American Pie kind of feel.
Yeah.
I just the way that the whole thing kind of feels, and there's a lot of wordy elements to it, and it's a very Americana, and and it has that feeling of just again, for lack of a better term, a lot of Bruce's songs are all about that open road and, hey, I hate this town, it sucks, let's get out of here. But I kind of got that. I always love a good Barry sax. That speaks to me as a Barry sax player. I almost said a former Barry sax player. Oh my goodness,
right.
R.I.P. my musical career.
But you never know.
And the outro, like you mentioned, it's very nice, very nice. I love. It shows off what the band can do quite well. And like I said, lyrically, this is a typical, this town is so messed up, let's leave it. Lyrics that exemplify this are, these two lanes will take us anywhere. We got one last chance to make it real. To trade in these wings on some wheels. Climbing back, heaven's waiting down on the tracks. So, I mean, overall, if it weren't for Bruce's vocals, this would be a very awesome opening track to the album.
Yeah, I disagree a little bit on the vocals. Not that I don't get where you're coming from, because Bruce's vocals on a lot of this does sound on the forced side.
Yeah.
But especially compared to some of the other tracks that we're going to get into, I think his singing sounds fine. I mean, a lot of people say, well, that's just him trying too hard, and I'm just thinking, no, I think that's just his voice. That's how he sounds, and I understand that it can great because it definitely has that very sort of a gruffness to it, and we're gonna get out of this town. Like, it doesn't seem real. Like, it seems like he's playing a character, and he very well may be.
Yeah.
But I think he plays the character very well.
I think every single track where I will mention about Bruce's vocals, there's a couple spots where I don't mind it and it actually sounds pretty good to me, but my beef isn't with him playing a character. It's more on the technical, the delivery side of it,
right?
That I don't care for. If he's playing a character, cool. One of my favorite bands, and I'll talk about them much later on, is the Gaslight Anthem,
right?
And they at least especially earlier on in their career, they channel Bruce Springsteen to an extent, and the lead singer of that band, for more or less, does play a character, because I've heard him do interviews, and those vocals I don't mind. So
right.
Anyways,
that's a fair point. That's a fair point. Yeah. But I think again, compared to some of the other tracks, I think some of the other tracks get a lot more strain, and we'll get there.
Oh yeah, we will.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get to Born to Run.
We'll see about that. We'll see.
All right, so ready to move on to 10th Avenue Freeze Out.
10th Avenue Freeze Out.
So I will lead this one off. So I know, I literally just mentioned it in the last track here, that a lot of Bruce's songs are basically, hey, let's hit the open road and Americana. This isn't that. And This is just a nice soul track, dude.
It really is. It really is. I think, it's just. I think I've read in past articles that this was Bruce's tribute to soul singers like Otis Redding and Arthur Conley, for example.
Yeah.
Very just basic Memphis horns type of track.
Yeah.
And it works out so well. I mean, the band is sort of front and center here. The lyrics really aren't the focal point. They don't have to be.
Yeah.
Where he's just talking about... I think he's talking about kind of the opposite of going out on the open road, which it sounds like he's, caught in a jam. He might be stuck in a traffic jam and just sort of getting out his blues in a fancy sense. Yeah. But realistically, this is just a good R&B track. The band cooks real well here. The only part that a little bit of a nitpick here is in the bridge of the song, where Springsteen's kind of just wailing, and then you hear that that could have been produced a little better, but that is a massive nitpick on my end. I really don't have much to say about this track other than it's really good.
I had the same notes about the bridge. I wrote, the bridge is very interesting.
Yeah.
And again, lyrically not much here, but I really, really love how tight that band sounds. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Bruce's vocals are still very off-putting to me.
Right.
And it's more I feel here, the staccato delivery, 10th Avenue Freeze Out, and the way that, I don't know, it just sounds flat. I don't know, man. I feel like I'm gonna say that with every single.
You might. But I get where you're coming from. There is a certain, I don't want to say arrogance, maybe overconfidence is the word here.
Yeah.
When he's trying to do his vocals, he's definitely playing them up.
Yeah.
you know, like what on the verses, particularly when he's doing that da 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 da. You know, like it definitely feels like he's pushing a little bit, but again, I think a lot of this goes to if you think it works or not, and I think it does. Like you say it was off-putting, like it didn't put me off per se. I think it clicks. Even though I know he's trying too hard, like it feels like it's blending in here. So, but yeah, no, the best part of this is the band for sure. Like there's a lot of times where like, and I don't want to go down too far this road because this is not what this show's about, but it feels like there's a lot of times where like a lot of white artists will try to like purvey like black music and kind of come flat on their face. This isn't one of those tracks. Like this is like legit R&B. Like the band sounds like an R&B band. And whether or not the singer of this band disqualifies that is up to the listener, which in this case it doesn't for me. I like this track.
Okay, cool. I mean, overall, like, you know, band is, again, like, you know, killing it. I really love what they're bringing to the table. Bruce's vocals kind of like bring it back down to earth a little bit for me.
Yeah, but I think that kind of the thing with Bruce's vocals is that I think it's meant to be down to earth. Like he doesn't want to be like whenever the Beatles did Sgt. Pepper, like they want to be this different band. They want to be out there in the world playing these characters. Whereas I think the character that Bruce wants to play, like it's almost like a fictionalized version of himself.
So when I mean bringing it back down to earth, I'm like, you know, taking it down like a grade, not like, you know, from a feel kind of standpoint.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, in terms of like, you know,
like basically what you're saying is on a technical basis, on a sonic basis, you feel his vocals bring this down. It's not a thematic thing. Okay, I can understand that.
So before we even go on, like, you know, in terms of rating this album, what I did to give this album a fair shot is I took each track. I'm like, okay, here's where I think Bruce's vocals are at, and here's where I feel like the rest of the band's at, and I just averaged it out. So So in order to give it a fair shot, and I think you would appreciate that.
I can understand that.
So, you ready to move on to Night?
Let's go into the night.
Okay. So, I'm going to let you kick this one off.
Okay. To me, this track basically feels like a sequel, sort of the part 2 of Thunder Road. Because it starts with that really fast-paced, blitz of saxophone and instrumentation. And it really doesn't stop. It just keeps going on that pace, like real fast and furious. Again, the band sounds great. Clarence Clemens, the sax player on this, or the tenor or the soloist on sax on this album, like this is just some of the best sax work that's ever been on a rock and roll record, as far as I'm concerned. Lyrically, I think this is more or less of whereas Thunder Road was Bruce speaking about his perspective of wanting to get out of town and, you know, sort of go into this open world of fun things to do. I think this is the difference between this and Thunder Road is on Night, Bruce is empathizing with the common man who may be listening to this and saying, you know, you may want to get out into the night too. You may want to be that guy. And this is kind of what that song's about.
Yeah.
You know, talk about, you know, dealing with the boss and, you know, leaving your house and turning off all the lights and going into the night. It's not a lyrical masterpiece by any means, but again, I think this track is very, very solid. Like the first time I heard it, I was like, whoa! And that feeling's kind of come down a little bit since then on repeated listens, but it's still just like, yeah, this is good stuff.
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. Like, you know, comparing this to, like, you know, hitting that open road kind of feel. I love how, like I said, like a lot of his tracks are basically about hitting the open road, and we're almost like halfway through the album, and we only hit one track about like hitting an open road. But
well, this one kind of does too.
Yeah, this is more about like, you know, working that 9-to-5 lifestyle while dreaming of like, you know, something more, like a rock star life kind of lifestyle. And I love Clarence Clemens in this track here. The way the intro works with the rest of the band, it's very nice. And the way that the band flows during the chorus is just so tight. And, like, there's so many moments about this track here where, like, just everything clicks so well. Bruce's vocals, meh. Not gonna get too much into that because I feel like at this point, like, we're not even halfway through, and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse with a dead horse at this rate. And again, like, another really interesting thing that I noticed here is how, like, the lyrics change up with each chorus. So, like, I'm only gonna do, like, the first two choruses here, just so you can see what I'm talking about. So the first chorus goes, and the world is bursting at its seams, and you're just a prisoner of your dreams, holding on for your life, because you work all day to blow them away in the night. And the second chorus, and you're in love with all the wonder it brings, and every muscle in your body sings as the highway ignites. You work 9 to 5, and somehow you'll survive till the night. And, like, I appreciate that penmanship. And yes, it doesn't have to be. There's not a lot here lyrically. Like, we don't have to come through it like how I've come through Wilco's like lyrics,
right?
But that's not the point of this track here. It's not the point of what Bruce brings to the table. Like, he's talking about, like, that everyman kind of feel. Like, I will say, like, the way that this track flows, it's very, very nice. In terms of, like, again, I'm going to bring up Bruce's vocals. It's not a bad delivery compared to the rest of the tracks here. Still not a highlight for me, but it just, I don't know. Now that I'm really visualizing the track in my head right now, I just feel like, it sounds strained, and I feel like at this point, now that I'm really thinking about and dissecting it, it might be, like you said, like, Bruce might be just trying to overdo it. And him just saying, hey, this is going to be my message to the everyman. And maybe with, like, his later albums, he learns to, like, dial it back, and that's where he really gets good. So. Yeah,
I can understand that. And, I think I like the way the song is structured. I like how it sort of builds up, like, it builds like a pre-chorus and then a chorus after that, and then it just sort of comes back down. I really like that a lot. But aside from that, I think there's really not much more to say other than I think this is a really solid track.
Okay.
So you ready to go hide in the Backstreets?
No. How long were you sitting on that?
Not long, but I figured let's go with it.
All right. So Backstreets. I love the piano intro and how that grows into the rest of the band. It's a very nice touch. And here is where, like, one track off the album where I actually like how Bruce's vocals actually sound, especially when he's yelping and he's screaming, because it lands very well. During the verses, it's kind of like, okay, it does still have that kind of flat feel, but it's when he really starts to dig in there and, like, really just blends in. It almost kind of reminds me of, like, I know it's a very poor comparison, but, like, Kurt Cobain, where how his vocals pop. Like, I can appreciate how that works.
So it's funny you mentioned that, and I was so worried that it was going to come to this. This is the one track on the album that, ironically, I don't like Bruce's vocals.
Oh, yeah. See those tables?
They have turned.
Yeah.
I think that wailing... See, you talk about him being strained on the other track. I think this is the most strained he sounds.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's forcing it way too hard on the chorus. Like, it doesn't come across organically. It doesn't feel very... this is the kind of track where if this was the first track on the album, I feel like it would have labeled Springsteen as a madman that nobody could appreciate. Like, it just sounds so strange. Now, I'm not gonna say this is a bad song. It's not. It's just the vocals on it are so strained, especially towards the end.
Yeah,
where he's going rah 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 in the Backstreet. Like, you talk about him sounding flat on. I think it was either 10th Avenue Freeze Out or Night. I think he sounds flat here.
Okay.
And this is easily my least favorite track on the album. But there are parts of it I do like. I do like the bridge
Yeah.
in the middle. And I think his singing on the verses is fine. Honestly, when I heard this track for the second time on my way up here today to do the recording, I had a thought. It's like, you know who really could have done this song with a whole lot better vocal?
Who?
Billy Joel.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
Because Billy Joel definitely comes from that same level of, sort of singer-songwriter from the New York scene, dealing with, the ins and outs of everyday life, the difference between the glamour of the rich life and the tough street hustle of, the down and dirty life. And I think Springsteen does a really good job of that too, but again, something on this song did not click with me. And I think it also doesn't help that the lyrics are kind of, I wouldn't say a nothing burger, but they don't especially compared to Thunder Road or Night, or even some of the tracks on the back half of the album, I don't think it really conveys any type of real connection with the listener as far as, let me take you into this world where we have to hide in the back streets and, it's life or death out there. I listen to it, I'm thinking, I really don't care. So, this track, it's not a horrible track. It's very listenable. And, if you're listening on the album, it's not it's an immediate skip. It's fine, but his vocals are too strained. And it's the least favorite track on the album for me.
I can respect that, and it's interesting, how we both take away from Bruce's vocals, different takes on it. I was kind of oh, well, that's interesting. So one other note that I will make about this track, and then we can go on to the big one.
Yes.
So you talk about how this doesn't really Backstreets doesn't really have a lyrical theme that can really suck in a listener.
Yeah.
Or bring in a listener. Suck in might be a very poor choice of words there.
Right. I knew what you meant though.
Yeah.
So.
So I would say that the meaning that I took from Backstreets is more about hey, remember how that we were young and all the stuff we used to do? Mm-hmm. This is that.
Right.
Japan Droid. There's a band called Japan Droids. They have a song called Younger Us, and that song is basically hey, remember when you were about to go to bed, but you got up to drink with me instead. That's the kind of feel I got from here, and lyrics that kind of exemplify this are: remember all the movies Terry'd we go see, trying to learn to walk like the heroes we thought we had to be, and again, a lot of Bruce's lyrics in here are basically just singing Backstreets, but overall, I can kind of dig this track here.
Okay.
It's not my least favorite. I don't even know what my least favorite would be, to be honest with you.
Well, we might come back to that.
Yeah, but
but I would say I know what you're saying about the theme of the lyrics, and I agree that that's what it is.
Yeah,
and I agree that Bruce is trying. It's just that in a way that, again, like Thunder Road, like Born to Run, even Night.
Yeah.
This track doesn't connect to me with the listener like the other ones do.
Okay.
But that's just my opinion.
You ready?
Let's go.
All right. So Born to Run. I did Backstreet, so you can do the big one.
I'll kick off Born to Run, and then I'll let you inevitably break my heart. So.
Well, I mean, I'm trying not to break your heart, man.
I know. Yeah. This isn't the Woco episode.
Yeah.
So Born to Run. What can I say about this track? Other than I think it's one of the greatest songs in the history of rock and roll. I really do.
Okay.
And a lot of it has to do not so much with Bruce's vocals or his words about, like you said earlier, getting on that open road and getting out into the night, per se.
Yeah.
But what I love dearly about this track is the execution of the band. It is 11 out of 10, no notes, except for the notes I'm about to talk about because it's so good. So here's one thing, and I feel so bad for Max Weinberg, who for the majority, like for 99% of the E Street Band era of Bruce Springsteen was his drummer.
Yeah.
This is one of the few tracks he actually didn't drum on.
No.
The guy who was the drummer was a guy by the name of Ernest Boom Carter, as it's placed on the liner for the album. And I feel bad for Max Weinberg because this is just one of the greatest drumming performances I've ever heard on a rock song.
Yeah.
Just that, the drums alone are a 10 out of 10. Just that piston pumping, like that bass and start, that the snare fills, the triplet towards the end of the last chorus. It is one of the best drum performances I can think of on record, and it's produced so fantastically well. Like, what makes this song so great to me is like, I don't know how familiar you are with the Detroit sound, or like the sound of like the blue-eyed soul of like the late 60s from like the song Devil in the Blue Dress On by Mitch Wright and the Detroit Wheels.
Yeah.
Or like early Seeger.
Yeah.
Like the style there of drumming was just like hit the drums as hard as you can, they won't talk back to you. And it was just like so fast-paced, sort of like it as if it was like a car engine.
Yeah.
Like you feel like you're in the inside of a Porsche when you hear this song. Aside from that, a lot has been said about how Springsteen sort of modeled this song and a lot of his songs based on Phil Spector's Wall sound.
Yeah.
And I think this is the one rock song that comes closest to that as far as just layers of sound and just a big pounding musical cannon that just goes right in your face. And it's delicate in other areas, like on the parts where he's like, one of the lyrics that I remember was like, "Together, Wendy, we can live the sadness. I'll love you all the madness in my soul." Like the little like glockenspiel in the back there, it's just spot on. Springsteen producing this track. This is one of the greatest productions in all of like history. And I think his vocals honestly sound really good on this track. I understand they still sound like Springsteen, so take that for what you will. But just so many great moments. Just whenever he says, "Baby, we were born to run," and like that forced back into the band, or the main riff that the band gets into, and just one of the best moments in the history of rock for me is right in the middle of the bridge, where Bruce says, "I want to die with you, Wendy, on the streets tonight, everlasting kiss," and then it just goes right into the second sax solo. I wouldn't even call it a solo. It's just this wall of musicians led by Clarence Clemens and Ernest Carter just going into the night. And like it feels like it is the moment, that explosion of feelings that comes with dying in an everlasting kiss. I would say this is on that list of songs like Bohemian Rhapsody, Layla, Stairway to Heaven. Born to Run is right up there. If this album was just this song 8 times, it would be an easy 10 out of 10. Your turn.
So I was just so captivated by like how you were describing this track. You know what it kind of reminded me of?
What's that?
Have you ever heard about the Pitchfork review for Kid A?
No, but I can only imagine.
The way that you just described Born to Run is similar to that.
Oh, jeez.
Like,
I'll have to look that up now.
Like, if I could remember correctly, like, the reviewer who was talking about Kid A compared this to, like, a shooting star that only comes every once in a while.
Oh, my.
And, like, anyways.
But yeah, and for those of you who are watching this on a screen or listening to this on a screen, you may want to get some napkins, or pause the episode, get some napkins, and wipe off the screen from the gushing I just did. So anyway, Ryan, you were saying.
I'll start with the bad.
Okay.
And then I'll go with the good, because like I don't want to just again, a lot of like the way I've been, like, talking about this album, like, I've been going back and forth. So, like,
Yeah.
I can't just be like, because, like, I'm better than that. We're better than that, right?
I mean, you can't go into an English class like on a paper and expect to get an A.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's what we did with our Mumford and Sons episode, but that was well deserved because, like, the instrumentals and the vocals were bad. So
I wouldn't even say they were bad. They were just boring and repetitive and not worth any further merit.
yeah. So anywho, so Born to Run was my first introduction to Radio Nowhere. That whole album was my first introduction to Bruce Springsteen. But when I wanted to check out, like, Bruce Springsteen, like, this was the track that introduced me to him. And his vocal delivery here, the biggest way that there's 2 points that I can have to it, not have to, but, like, describe my issues with it. At points, it seems like it's offbeat, and it doesn't, like, it's just, like, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of, like, somebody drunkenly coming into a vocal and being like, rah, 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 rah. And I'm sorry that I'm breaking your heart right now, man.
That's okay. I understand where you're coming from, but I'll let you continue.
Yeah, and, like, he's just mumbling during, like, like, at least the introduction, and that's so off-putting to me. And, like, whenever he starts going up, it's just, like, again, it reaches that strain point that I just can't get behind, man. But that's my issue with Bruce's vocals in this track here. Did you want to comment before I go into the E Street Band?
I will say that I understand what you're saying about the mumbling at the band. I never actually even thought about that.
Yeah.
About how it is kind of low.
Yeah.
But I think that just kind of helps build things up into the chorus.
Yeah.
And as far as the strainness, I respectfully disagree with that. I think as far as, like, his execution, this is probably his cleanest singing on the album, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 tracks toward the end. So again, I just think everything fits with itself. But again, I'll let you talk about the E Street Band now.
Okay, cool. So that being said, fantastic opening in terms of, like, what the band can bring to the table. Like, everything sounds so freaking tight, and I love how the band's able to, like, really kill it with this driving feel. And, like, you talk about, like, Clarence Clemens throughout this track here, and, like, the solo that he has is, like, easily, probably, I mean, I'll have to think about compare this solo to Jungleland, but that's such a great solo, man. And I love how, like, even the bass has an opportunity to do a solo as well. Is that the bass that does that solo, or no?
Where are you talking about?
I don't remember, but I do have there noted that the bass had a solo as well. I'm like, or it might have been just a feature section.
Might have just been a feature section, but again, the middle section of this, and this is why, thinking about this, because I was listening to this album on the way down here.
Yeah.
And I listened to this song and I realized, okay, this song for most of it is kind of structured very similar to Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah.
You sort of have the opening with the first couple verses and the choruses, and then it goes to this massive solo, because my thought listening to Clarence Clemens was like, okay, this is kind of like listening to Brian May on Bohemian Rhapsody, and then when that's over, it just kind of goes into this whole other world for about a minute or so.
Yeah.
That, again, Bohemian Rhapsody did the same thing. The only difference is I think it flows a little better here as a cohesive song altogether. Not to knock Bohemian Rhapsody, it's one of the greatest songs of all time, period, end of story.
But, like, even to your point, like, in terms of, like, a coherent, like, message in a song, I would take Born to Run over Bohemian Rhapsody. At least, like, overall, like, it just seems like, Bohemian Rhapsody was, it is a hodgepodge of, like, oh, hey, let's put this here, let's put this here, and let's just make sure this all flows together.
Right. It is a technical masterpiece, and the song itself is just so fun.
Yeah.
I would probably even say it's a little more fun, per se.
Yeah.
Like, if you put Bohemian Rhapsody on your car, everyone's going to want to sing along to that stuff.
Yeah.
This song, not so much, but I don't think this is that kind of song. I just, again, I think it's more or less a personal confession almost, kind of like Layla is, where it's just the singer's pouring his heart out, and the band's just giving it 100,000, 10%. I'm not sure you want to write that number out, but you can do that at home. But yeah, this is a 10 out of 10 no-note song for me. I'm not sure if I was cutting you off there. Or...
Oh, no. Like, again, I don't feel like I have much to add in terms of the instrumental side because, like, you basically detailed everything so freaking well.
Yeah.
I wanted to get my point in about Bruce's vocals, but, like, overall, like, this is probably the tightest of the band's sounds throughout the whole album.
Absolutely. And I think, for as much as Bruce's vocals might strain, his production or co-production on this track is just perfect to me. Like, I would not change a thing about this song.
So, that being said, you ready to move on to She's the One?
Let's move on to She's the One.
All right, so I will kick this one off.
Okay.
Because you kicked off Born to Run. So... I like the interesting piano lick in the background to start out the track, and the bouncing feel during the chorus is a very nice touch. Clarence Clements has like another nice sax solo here.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, decent instrumentals, not as strong as the other tracks, to be honest with you, on the instrumental side, but that's fine. You don't always like.
Not every song has to be Born to Run.
Yeah. Or I was gonna say, not every sandwich you eat has to be like a spicy Italian hoagie. Like,
no, it doesn't.
Yeah, so, you can appreciate like a good salad every once in a while, but like overall, I like this song. It's an interesting, fun love song. I like it. I like it a good bit. My note about Bruce's vocals is sounds like he has cotton in his mouth. Okay. On to you.
So, pretty much, honestly, I think you actually hit the nail on the head for this one.
Oh, yeah.
Because the instrumental is pretty good. I like the little, I guess it's a synth or a keyboard doing that little whoop, 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 whoop
yeah.
thing. I like that. I like the piano. I like the Bo Diddley beat that Max Weinberg provides in the song.
Yeah.
Lyrically, there's really not a whole lot. It's just a, generic love song in a sense to, as generic as Bruce Springsteen can get, which is not that generic. And while I don't hate his vocals on here, I will say that he does kind of mumble a little bit, and the problem is that, especially with the very percussive nature of the keyboards, it all kind of blends in together. It almost feels like he's like phasing in and out of his own instrumental track.
Okay.
At least at the very beginning. Towards the end, it becomes a little bit more stable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I noticed that early on. I was like, it's a production choice that might have needed a little bit more cleaning, or an artistic choice where he could have smoothed out the vocals, and not to, because like basically his vocals going and the keyboard is basically doing the same thing, so it kind of cancels each other out.
Mm-hmm.
So it does sound kind of weird, but again, that's the beginning. The majority of the track is fine. It's a fine track.
In terms of like a comparable track here, it kind of like in terms of like what it's trying to do, I feel like it's like comparable to like 10th Avenue Freeze Out in terms of like it's just a fun track.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
It's not trying to be anything more than it is. And for that, I mean, it's a solid track. So, you ready to do the meeting across the river?
Let's meet across the river.
All right, you're it.
Okay. So this, when I first revisited this album, this is the one track I really didn't remember anything about, like, at all. Like, I'm thinking, how does this track even go? Like, what is this track about? But listening back to it, I realized this is a really good song. It's not, I mean, lyrically, I'd say, and vocally, I would say Bruce sounds even a little cleaner on here than Born to Run. Like, he sounds very, it's sort of very hushed. And I made the comparison earlier how Backstreets might have worked better as a Billy Joel song.
Yeah.
I think this song could also be a Billy Joel song. In fact, this one feels like almost a Billy Joel song that Bruce Springsteen covered and made into his own sort of thing. Because really, the instrumental background on this is so sparse compared to everything else. I'm pretty sure it's just piano, trumpet, and maybe bass and guitar, maybe.
Yeah.
That's about it. So it's very much driven by Bruce's vocals, which again I think are probably some of the best on the album. And so it does really give this feel of, yeah, I think this just does a better job. Like this is what Backstreets should have been. Like this is what Backstreets should have sounded like. Dark, sort of hiding away, very, hey man, can you lend me a couple bucks? And this is the real deal this time, and I'm gonna throw that money on the bed and show her I'm not messing around this time. Like this, like he sounds like an outlaw more so than he does on Backstreets, and I think it really makes for a compelling track. Is it like, oh my goodness, you have to go out and get this track right now type of level? Not necessarily, but it's a very good track, in my opinion.
You talk about this being a very compelling track, and I absolutely agree, man. And in terms of a production note that you didn't hit on, which I really was drawn into with this track, is that distant trumpet. Mm-hmm. And it feels like it really gives it this kind of nighttime kind of feel,
yeah, like a noir.
Yeah, and the way I walked away from this track with the feeling like you said, Bruce was an outlaw. You could really just picture the scene wherever Bruce is asking this Eddie guy to lend him a few bucks to get this one last big score. Mm-hmm. So yeah, for that, I would say it's probably not my favorite off the album. I don't know if I have a favorite off the album, to be honest.
We'll make our picks at the end of the
yeah.
Even though anyone listening should probably know what mine are by this point.
Yeah. It might be the next track that might be my favorite, to be honest with you. That might be a cop out though. But overall, Bruce's vocals sound flat. Moving on. Again, a whole lot. There's not much to it in terms of what the East Street Band brings to the table. Mm-hmm. But again, what Matt described, this is basically piano, bass, and trumpet. Right. And Bruce's vocals. That's what it is. And if you can really get behind Bruce's vocals, this is a really, really cool song, man.
It really is. And you talk about the imagery.
Yeah.
You can imagine this taking place at some hole in the wall Italian restaurant, or outside of a cheap motel.
Yeah.
Where he's just trying to talk to a guy and be like, listen, man, I really need your help tonight, man. Really seedy, really very behind the scenes, this isn't supposed to happen type stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the instrumental paints a really good picture of that. And I think Bruce's vocals, again, Bruce's vocals are Bruce's vocals. I think they paint a solid picture in helping create that image.
Okay.
So now we have reached Jungleland.
Jungleland.
And it is your turn to close us out.
All right. So I'll say my last bit about Bruce's vocals, and then I'll end on a positive note here.
Okay.
Because, that's what I've been trying to do throughout this whole review. I feel like Matt is being like, oh, man, does this guy have earbuds? But no, we're not back in our college days. We can respectively, go through albums.
We've matured.
That being said, maybe down the road I'll add, mental note to add another album that I like the vocals on, but I don't think that you would like the vocals on. But we'll explore that later on.
Okay.
So, anyways, Jungleland. The Bruce's vocals, they sound flat and raspy. At least in the opening part. But that's the only note that I had. I love the opening with the strings and the piano dueling against each other, and how the band really just pops and transitions into the full version of what it's bringing to the table between the second and the third verse. You know what song this kind of reminded me of?
What?
Baba O'Reilly.
Really?
Yeah, that open wasteland kind of feel, and just a very open and kind of big kind of song.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can respect that.
Yeah. So yeah. I love the guitar solo, love the sax solo, and how much do you know about that legendary sax solo?
About the legendary sax solo?
Yeah, in this track here.
From a factual basis, or just how many times I've listened to it?
And from a factual basis.
Nothing other than I've heard it twice and I really like it.
So apparently that solo took 16 hours to record.
Really?
Yeah. And the reason why is that Bruce was watching and guiding Clarence throughout the whole process. He was very meticulous about like how he wanted it to sound. Mm-hmm. And this is the solo that made Clarence like, a notable sax player. Like people really, really were digging it. And like, I can understand because it's not as like, riffy and like, hey, like let me play as many notes as possible. Like it basically halts the momentum of the track and builds it back up, and it transported, and like the sax line is the guide there, and it's really the emotional focal point of the track. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna let you chime in here.
Yeah, I think you did a great job of describing that. It is interesting that it did take as long. I mean, I'm not surprised by that at all because, again, considering how very precise the execution on the majority of this album has been, especially on Born to Run, the title track.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me. Bruce is like a hardcore perfectionist.
Yeah.
So for him to have done that, and he's not the first to have done that, he won't be the last. I know one of the tales I recall is, I don't know if you're familiar with the song Peg by Steely Dan.
No, I never listened to much Steely Dan, to be honest with you.
Okay. Well, that track, I think they took like 200 takes to get the right guitar solo for.
Whew.
By multiple guitarists before they decided on one.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating because that solo's fine. It's
Yeah.
not bad, but it's fine. But yeah, the sax here is phenomenal. I agree with you on the guitar solo. It sounds great. You mentioned it sounds like Bob O'Reilly. I don't quite agree with that. There's another song I think it kind of sounds like, especially from a chord perspective and also from a structure perspective, and that's Come Sail Away by Styx.
Okay, I can get behind that.
Because the piano is kind of... In fact, I almost want to say that Come Sail Away is a giant ripoff of Jungleland, in a sense. Because the chords are pretty much the same and the build is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Except instead of, New Jersey Backstreets, it's on a boat.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it almost feels like the sax solo in that middle section just takes it into another dimension as far as, the style of the song. Because it starts as very much... basically the same theme of, here we are in Jersey being tough and everything. And another song that this reminded me of, even though not even close sonically, is the song The Last Time I Saw Richard from Blue.
Giving us harken back to like one of our, an album that I was very grateful that we reviewed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we both gave it a 10 out of 10. I don't think either of us would change that.
Yeah.
But the reason I say Jungleland is very similar to that is that for this entire album, we've been hearing about this mythos of how, the great city is, this sort of open land of opportunity and romance and men being men and people being people and people burdened by the 9-to-5 lifestyle finally being able to express themselves.
Yeah.
This turns that whole thing upside down on its ass. Because this song is more or less, hey, this area that we live in, sort of, this sort of Jersey-esque area on the shores of New York into New Jersey, ain't that great. And there is a possibility that some stuff could really go down and, things could get really dark.
Man.
Similar to how Joni Mitchell basically presented this character, this Richard character, that basically said her whole view on love and romance was basically BS. And like, listen, I've just settled into the great American lifestyle and, the great suburban lifestyle. And if you're against that, sure, go ahead. But keep beating your head against the wall. I'll be living in comfort over here.
Yeah.
And I feel like Springsteen isn't necessarily disowning his own mythos there, but just presenting the other side of it, saying, yeah, things could get bad, and they can be. And this is just... And not to mention the fact that for a lot of the album, he's going, he's referencing Roy Orbison and Thunder Road. He's sounding like Phil Spector on Born to Run. That solo in the middle, the sax solo, cannot be more quintessentially mid-70s. Like, it brings the entire mythos into the present day. This brings the whole idea of, life in New Jersey and in the city back down to earth. And I think this does a great this whole track does a great job in presenting that in a very operatic sense. Like this is definitely the closing number to the musical. Yeah, and that's pretty much what I have to say about it. So it's a great closing track.
Man, not much else I can say as well, man. Like you, I feel like we did a good job describing Jungleland.
I think so.
Yeah. So we did it.
We did it.
We ran
Yeah, we ran.
because we were born to.
Tramps like us.
Yeah, look at that, man. So you ready for some ratings?
Well, I'm ready for some ratings.
All right. So
I'm going to let you go first.
All right. So I like I said, the way I rated this album, I took the instrumental parts and then the vocal parts and separated them because, it would not be fair to just be like Bruce's vocals instantly bring down every track. This is a 0 out of 10,
right?
Because one, I think Matt would officially just fire me as a co-host here,
right?
And two, again, that's not fair. A part of my musical maturity is basically just, really just trying to really take away good from it. And, there's a lot of good off this album here in terms of what the E Street Band can bring together. But I can't get over Bruce's vocals. And for anyone who's listened to this whole episode, one, thank you. But two, it's clear as day, I just don't care for Bruce's vocals. I gave it an honest try.
Okay.
That being said, 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10.
Yeah.
I will say I'm not heartbroken by that. I kind of was expecting it to be in that range, around the 5 to 6 range. So,
yeah. What I will say though is if Bruce's vocals were improved, or if it was if I could separate that entirely and not take that into consideration, my opinion about it, this could go into the 7 or 8 range.
Okay,
pretty easily.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, my turn. So at the start of this episode, I said I chose this album because I was thinking I could possibly give it a 10 out of 10 without Ryan giving it a 10 out of 10.
Yeah,
which would make it the first time in this show's brief history.
Yeah.
And I cannot do that.
Okay.
For 2 major reasons. Well, yeah, 2 major reasons.
Okay.
One, there's enough on it where I'm kind of like, this is okay.
Yeah.
Or in the case of Backstreets, just kind of not really into it all.
Yeah.
And secondly, this. I listened to an album earlier this week during my walk. It was a brief walk. It's a very brief album, too. It only lasts roughly, I think, 33 minutes. And it is a bona fide 10 out of 10. It's After the Gold Rush by Neil Young.
Okay.
And that album, along with another 10 in Blue, compared to this, when I listened to this album, I realized this is a man's vision, and it is a vision that a lot of times is executed perfectly, it is executed beautifully, and it is executed to a standard of pop music, rock music perfection. And Born to Run is definitely that song. But the problem with the one problem I have with that song and the one problem I have with this album overall is that it doesn't inspire. It might inspire people to be into rock and roll. It might inspire people to say, this sounds fun, let me do it. But there's a simplicity to Blue and to After the Gold Rush where you listen to it and not only can you think, I can do this, but also anyone can be able to put their emotions out there if they construct it properly enough. And I feel like there's a couple moments on this album where it feels and the thing is, the vocals on After the Gold Rush and Blue seem a lot more authentic than Springsteen's on here. Not that I think Bruce Springsteen's vocals are let me try that one again. It's not like I think Bruce's vocals are bad, but I will agree they do sound very forced and very overconfident at times. I like them. I like this album. I think it's a great album. I think the band itself is a 10 out of 10 on the majority of the tracks, if not all of them. But I can't in good conscience give this a 10 out of 10. I'm going to give it a 9.
That might be your highest rating that isn't a 10.
I think so. I think this and Turn Out the Lights were the only two albums I gave a 9 to.
Okay.
Which is kind of weird to me that I'm giving this the same as Turn Out the Lights, but realistically, it is what it is.
Yeah, this is where we're at, man. So,
all right.
All right. So, I'm gonna let you do the next album.
Based off this album, what album I recommend?
Yeah.
That's kind of well. If we were going chronologically, I would suggest the next album, which is Darkness on the Edge of Town.
Yeah.
But I, in good conscience, have not listened to that album full, so I can't actually do that.
Yeah.
Instead, I will go to the other major blockbuster of Bruce Springsteen's career, and that is Born in the USA.
Okay.
And I think that's another track where, or another album, I should say, where very much relies on its mythos. And I've actually, for those who want to do a little bit of deep digging into my past on the internet, I used to have a Tumblr called the Durz's Vinyl Collection, where I rated albums that were in my vinyl collection, and this was one of them, and I actually did give Born in the USA a 10 out of 10. Because, to me, I think Bruce's vocals are great. I think the production is great. I think, again, there's not a track on there that is as powerful to me as Born to Run, but I don't think there's any track on there that's as meh as Backstreets, with the possible exception of I'm on Fire, but that's another review for another day.
Okay, cool. So there are two ways that I can go here. I could either go with the pretty cut and dry Ryan Kern's choice here in terms of like what I would recommend based off like who was influenced by Bruce Springsteen going forward.
Uh-huh.
Or I can go by like a gut feel that I have. I'm going to go with the influence because, that would be the most direct, hey, if you like this, you would like this kind of track here.
Okay.
So the album that I'm going to recommend is the 58 Sound by the one, the only, the Gaslight Anthem.
Okay.
It is the most cut and dry, hey, this is a Bruce Springsteen influenced record. A lot of great songs off that album. And Backstreets is a big closer off that album, comparatively like how Jungleland is off of this one here.
Right. Not to say Backstreets for the record.
Hey, I see what they did there. So, yeah, my official recommendation would be the 58 Sound by the Gaslight Anthem. Awesome album. One of my favorites from them. I think it is my favorite from those guys. So, yeah, if you like Bruce Springsteen and want to listen to a more modern version of what he does, one, you can check out his modern records.
Yeah.
But two, if you want to check out a different band, check out the Gaslight Anthem.
Yeah. Now, I know you've locked that in as your recommended album. If you had gone with your gut, what would you have said?
So, there's a band called Gang of Youth.
Never heard of them.
Okay. You would... We might have to do an episode one time coming up here soon. But, there's an album that they'd have called Go Further in Lightness. And that is more about, that gut feel that in a lot of Bruce's songs about hey, let's hit the road and run, let's we are young, let's forget about the night, let's just go kind of feel. So yeah, that would have been my gut feel. Okay. So
that's fair.
So yeah, the time has come.
The time has come.
We've officially done the whole Born to Run review. And it's time for me to announce what our next review is going to be.
And I'm going to sit here and play dumb and ask you what possibly could be our next album.
So, for those of you who, one, have been listening to every episode, one, thank you. But two, you might have noticed maybe a little bit of a theme. Other than whenever we did the January challenge. First came one, Phoebe Bridgers. Next came Julian Baker in terms of albums that I picked.
Right.
Then came Lucy Dacus. There was a reason for this.
Oh, I know.
And the reason why is that our next review is going to be the record by one Boy Genius.
It has come to this.
It has come to this. And the way, I mean, we'll talk about it in the episode there, but like, you know, the reason why I chose this and did it this way is that when I listened to the record for the first time, I'm like, oh, this is a great album. And I listened to it a couple times, but never really explored it since. And after checking out every single individual member of that group in terms of what they could bring to the table, I thought it would be an awesome way to like for us to review a Grammy nominated album.
Right.
And the time that we are officially recording this episode is the night of the Grammys, so let's see if we can give Boy Genius some luck here.
Maybe give Boy Genius a little luck, and because it is going up against Taylor Swift's Midnights and several other albums, this might be the last time me and Ryan see each other alive, because the world might get burned down by the time we have a chance to record the Boy Genius episode.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's it. Do you have anything else to say about Bruce, Boy Genius, sun-dried tomatoes?
Not really. I will say to those, again, who have been listening for, I believe this is our 19th episode of what we've done. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for keeping up with us. If you're following with us on social media, again, thank you there. Also, if you are, you still have a few weeks left to participate in our contest and tell others to get in on the act as well. Again, $20 to the record store of your choice. And all you have to do is, well, Ryan, if you want to explain the rules.
All right. So, essentially what you got to do is what I'm going to call everyone to do at the end of every episode. So, if you like what you've heard, the best way that you can support me and Matt here is follow us on your podcasting platform of choice. Give us a review or subscribe. If you really love YouTube, give us a thumbs up there. That's the way that the algorithm can pick us up. Now, if you guys want to support us further, hit us up on social medias. We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Threads. The username is TTHeyListen on all platforms. Yeah, that's basically how you can enter into the contest. Take a screenshot of you doing that action, send it over to me and Matt by any means necessary, and you'll be automatically entered in for a chance to win. And we don't have to do every single action. It just, if you do one of those actions, you have a chance to win. If you do every single action, you'll have multiple chances to win. Let's face it. And also, if you want to write to us, we do have a email at ttheylisten@gmail.com. You can give us feedback there, give us episode ideas. And yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And for the last time in this episode, I am not Matthew Durzik.
I'm not Ryan Kurtz.
And we are not born to run.